All right, Ligia, I got 1 o'clock Eastern. Is it okay if I go ahead and kick it off
Let's
officially?
let's go.
Awesome. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. If you're watching the recording, hope you're having a good day. We're going to be talking about applying decision science in marketing your legacy fundraising program. What's decision science? I don't know. We're all going to find out together. That's why we have Ligia here. Welcome. I'm Steven. I'm over here at Bloomerang. I'm actually at Bloomerang today. I'm in a giant cavernous building all by myself, but I am being safe. But it's good to see all of you. I'll be moderating today's discussion, as always. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Just want to let you all know that we are recording this session, and we'll be sending out the recordings and the slides later on today. So if you have to leave early or you get interrupted or you just want to review the content later on, don't worry. We're going to email everything to you this afternoon. You won't miss a thing. Just be on the lookout for an email from me. Just look for a Steven Bloomerang email. You'll get all that good stuff. But most importantly, please feel free to send in any questions or comments along the way. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So ask them early and often. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already introduced yourself in the chat, go for it. We'd love to hear from you. I'll also keep an eye on the Twitter feed if you want to send us a tweet. But we'd love for this to be interactive, so don't be shy. If this is your first Bloomerang webinar, I just want to say an extra special welcome to all you folks. We do these webinars a couple times a week nowadays. We'll bring on a great guest. Today is no exception. We love to do these webinars, but what we are most known for at Bloomerang is our donor management software. So if you're interested in that, just want to learn more about us, check out our website. You can watch all kinds of videos. Just for context, in case you're wondering what the heck is Bloomerang. But don't do that right now because we've got a friend of the program joining us, one of my favorites, my go-to for all things legacy fundraising. Ligia Peña is joining us. Ligia, how's it going? You doing okay?
Good. And just now, like my cat is like, I want cuddles.
That's okay.
So, no.
I'm pro cat, and anyone who doesn't like that is not welcome. I'm just kidding. That was a little strict, but no problem. And I usually got kids running around and dogs, so I think most people like cats. But in addition to being a cat owner, Ligia, you're all over the place. You're a PhD candidate at the University of Kent. You're speaking all the time on legacy fundraising. You just did a webinar like less than an hour ago, and you were gracious enough to come on and do one for us. So thanks for that, by the way, to squeeze in multiple webinars. Ligia is awesome. She's on the Rogare board, former Greenpeace. I mean, just tons of accolades. And she was with us in May talking about legacy, was gracious enough to come back. It's cooled down a little bit where you are, which is nice. But I'm excited because I don't know much about this topic, which probably isn't a surprise. But Ligia, I'll turn things over to you to tell us all about decision science.
Awesome. Thank you. And like, I think a conversation has started on whether you're a cat or a dog person. Oh no,
you love dog. I'm a dog person too.
I'm actually a dog person, and I ended up with 2 cats. So go figure.
That's cats are wily like that. They know.
Yeah. But I never understood people that said, "Oh, but my cats are just like dogs." I'm like, no, no one's buying it. Anyway, all right. So I'm the kind of presenter, and if you were in my session at the RAISE conference about half an hour ago, turns out I didn't realize that Steven was also presenting at the exact same time, so I missed his session. But I like to answer questions as we go along. So to facilitate that, I encourage you to use the Q&A box as opposed to the chat, because it's easier to track what's happening through the Q&A. And then what I'll do is every couple of slides, I'll stop and check to see if there's questions. And of course, I'm going to try to answer as many questions as possible, but I tend to get really excited and talk a lot. So I apologize if I don't get to your question, but I will share with you at the end of my slides. There'll be slides where you can get my email and all my social media, and you can contact me. So this is me. Steven already introduced me, so I'm not going to go over this, but basically I'm a nonprofit consultant at my agency called Globetrotting Fundraiser, and legacies is my passion, so much so that I'm currently doing my PhD on the topic. So I'm a super uber nerd when it comes to legacies. So here we go. So what are we going to cover today? Oh, if you do want to tweet along or something, my Twitter handle is globetrottingfr. And if you want to take a cat picture and put it on Instagram, you can tag me at Globetrotting Fundraiser. All right, so what are we going to cover today? We've got a lot of content, okay? So I hope you have rested and have a cup of tea or something. But I'm going to cover quickly at first, what is decision science, behavioral economics, and all of that. And then I'm going to talk about the heuristics that affect legacy. And I'm going to define what heuristics here is. Don't worry. And I'm going to present 4 case studies. And then I'm going to wrap it all up with top tips and some reads you can do and resources and stuff like that. So here we go. Oh, sorry. What did I do? I accidentally opened my browser, but you didn't see that, so that's good. Okay, so what are we talking about? When we talk about decision science, what are we talking about? Well, it's a combination of 3 areas of work. So evolutionary psychology, is basically looks at the behaviors from the past that still shape us today. So looking behind us, okay? Neuroscience, however, is how our brain literally processes information and experience in real time. So this is like the present. And the behavioral economics aspect is the real world practical rules that people use, often unconsciously. So things that we do by instinct or that are accustomed, like it's become mechanic for us. So these 3 elements, the past, the brain, and the context in which we interact, forms decision science. So it's 3 different areas of study. And if you're interested, this is basically my bookshelf of everything. I'll get back to that later on. So why is this important? Well, here's what happened. A lot of companies, a lot of for-profit companies have been using decision science and behavioral economics in the way they market to consumers, to us, to you, to me, to everybody. Spotify, yes, that is Predictably Rational on my bookshelf. I've got 3 of his books, amazing stuff. So MInstF, Uber, even the UK government. So all of this is, they all use it. In the nonprofit sector, we are just starting to use it. We're starting to talk a lot about it a lot more. And we're starting to understand and test a lot of how these things can apply. And so far, it's been applied more in the general fundraising realm, but in legacies, it's just starting. And that's why this is something that interests me so much, is because it is still untapped. And I think if we really, really want to set ourselves up for success to raise more in legacies and tap into that big wealth transfer that's happening, we need to really, really get into the whole decision science, behavioral economics area. And Mathilde, don't worry, you will get a reading list. And I'm going to talk about that later because I have a huge, huge library. This is only a part of my library behind me. So don't you worry. So what are we talking about here? So you've probably heard of this guy, Daniel Kahneman. And if you haven't, don't worry about it. It's all good. So he is, he wrote the book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is right here. And it's like really dry and really thick, but it's incredibly important. So here's the thing. He won the Nobel Prize. So like this little medallion, that's the Nobel Prize for economics. But here's the kicker. He's no economics guy. He is not an economist. He was one of the first to realize that economic systems are dictated on absolute logic. So when you put humans in the mix, then suddenly nothing makes sense. Because, you know, humans, we don't make any sense whatsoever, okay? And so he has 3 principles that underpin his theory, which is now has been extensively tested and proven. Oops, and I just jumped over this. So this is something he says, humans are to thinking as cats are to swimming, on that topic of whether you're a cat or a dog person. So we can do it, and when we have to, but we'd rather prefer not to, right? Let me elaborate on this a little bit more. So these three principles are this. Every day, we make between 25 to 35,000 decisions, most of which we don't even realize it. So just think about it. It's now what, 10 past 1 Eastern time? We've probably made about a third of those 25 to 35,000 decisions. And it's as simple as whether you're going to snooze the alarm or keep sleeping, whether you're going to get up or stay in bed another 8 minutes more, whether you'll get up and go to the bathroom or get up and get changed first. Those little, every single thing we do is a decision. The second principle is that we don't notice that we often use mental shortcuts. And that's what a heuristics is. A heuristic is a shortcut to making a decision. And so that's what makes, that's the logic to use to make decisions. And the decisions that we make, with these shortcuts are often wrong. So the heuristics are what sometimes lead us astray. So let's put a pin on that and we'll come back to that. We're going to come back to the heuristics because this is the thing that we need the most for legacy marketing. So, you know, he said, you know, his book is really about thinking fast. So we've often heard about, oh, I'm a right brain, you're left brain. So one side is like analytical, the other side is artistic and so on. He frames it differently. So system one is that automatic, subconscious, fast, quick kind of decision part of the brain, the system that makes the quick decisions. So things like, sorry, Mike, I should have closed the door because now my cat is like going a little bit mental. The system one is that intuitive, quick decision. So things like when I was saying whether you'll stay in bed or get up. That's the system one thinking, okay? The system two thinking is slower. It's calculating, it's conscious, and it can be more logical. So those are the things where the bigger decisions where you reflect, you absorb all the information, you analyze, and then you decide, you know? So, so this is how we make decisions, okay? So, you know, take a step back, think about some of the things you've done today. What were the things that you could say, okay, that was a system one thinking, and then the other things that perhaps required more of your energy, your mental, emotional, physical energy to make a decision, that would come from system two thinking. Does that make sense? Let's see. Let me see. I want to see the chat to see if that's making any sense whatsoever. All right, all good. Okay, cool. All right, if there's an issue, let me know. And don't forget to put your questions in the Q&A box. Okay, so remember when I said those heuristics and those shortcuts we take? So the brain is 2% of our body, but it takes up 20% of the energy that we expend every day. So that's a lot for just something that only takes up 2% of our entire physical body. So to combat that need for a lot of energy, we take these shortcuts. So take, for instance, in the image on the right-hand side. Imagine like this is your road. So it's like a sideways U, and that would take too long, right? So we want to take a quick shortcut. So you would cut it at the lower end, like the smaller end of the oval, right? And so that's a heuristics. It's those shortcuts that allows you to not have to think about things for too long or overanalyze, and just make that quick decision so you can move on to the next thing, right? Because we're overwhelmed with information, with data, with publicity, with stuff. And so we need to be able to move and go quickly, right? Okay, so how do we do this? Please don't freak out. We are not going to cover all of this, but I absolutely love this chart. This is the Cognitive Bias Codex, and basically like much more nerdier people than me have done this research, and they categorize all of the biases, basically all of the heuristics, the things that mental shortcuts that we take, they've categorized them in big categories and then they identify them and then categorize them. So for instance, we need to act fast. What should we remember? Too much information, not enough information. So these are the big categories, and then they've done subcategories. And of course, like, we could go on into this forever, and that's a lot. But what I've done is, and I can't take credit for this because I built this with a friend of mine, Dana Siegel, who is from the Management Center in the UK, and she's an expert when it comes to this. And her and I put all this entire presentation together, and we identified, yes, you will get a copy of the slides. It's going to be on the Bloomerang website. So you don't feel like you need to copy everything I'm going to be sharing here. You will have this entire slide deck with you. So we identified 7 of the most important heuristics that are applicable to the context of legacy marketing. So let's get to it. All right. So, so here we go. Sorry. Effect. So that is the first heuristics that we see used, or that we should be using. What does that mean? So effect is a mental shortcut that uses emotion to influence a decision. And we've been using this in fundraising forever. We just never really had a term for it, right? And so what that does is it helps the individual judge the risk and the benefits of something. So that gut reaction. So when you see, and I use this example because I took this from a website, a nonprofit website. So what is the emotion that is elicited in the donor when they see this image? So that's the effect heuristics, is that way of saying, oh, I'm reading text, and text can tell a story. But you know how we always say a picture can tell the picture can always tell the story. The picture comes and validates the story and can really be that trigger. Okay. And I'm going to share some of the case studies I'm sharing later. I'm going to demonstrate that. Okay. So that's the first one. Anchoring is also something that we use a lot, especially in fundraising. And now we're starting to see it more and more in legacies. So the anchoring describes the human tendency to rely heavily on the first piece of information. So that is the anchor. And so that piece of information is what's going to enable you to make that decision. So in this case, this was taken from another nonprofit website, and I went specifically to their legacy page, and this was the anchor. Even a gift, and you will, of 1% of your estate makes a difference. So the anchor is here, it's the 1%, the piece of information of the 1%. That basically tells the donor something as small as that can have big impact. And so the donor will hang on to that to help them make that decision of saying, oh, that's easy. I can totally do that. Now, would I use the 1% anchor? No, I would use something different, but that's not the point. The point is that you want to, when you develop your marketing, you want to figure out what would be the key piece of information that will help that donor take that next step, right? So that's anchoring. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions. So far, so good. So, okay, let's keep going then. Next, social proofing. And we know this one, right? This is perhaps the one that has been used the most. It's been tested and researched the most across all fundraising. And so that refers to when you write content that shows that other people like you, who look like you, who behave like you, are taking a particular action. Therefore, it reassures you that whatever it is that you're trying to do is normal, right? So it's all about copying actions of others. So in this example, and actually I think it's later on when I go more into the case study, is here where it says friends and patrons make up 75% of everyone who leaves a gift to the Royal Opera House in their will. And the Royal Opera House is one of the case studies that I'll be talking about later on. So you see how that says 75% of people like you also leave this. So it reassures the reader that whatever they are considering, they're not the outlier. They would be joining a lot of people who are just like them. Okay, making sense? Cool. All right. Next, uncertainty. So uncertainty is that mental shortcut that overrides a desired action. So basically what that means is that if there's missing information, if there's incomplete information, or there's conflicting information, then the donor will not take that desired action. And so our responsibility here is, or our job is then to remove any form of uncertainty, remove that friction, right? So when you're developing your marketing, your legacy marketing materials, you have to look at it not from your perspective, your organization's perspective, but from your donor's perspective. Have you removed the obstacles? Have you removed friction? Is there uncertainty? Is there any element in the content, in the way the content is written, that can cause confusion or uncertainty, really, quite honestly? And so this is something that you need to keep in mind. This is perhaps the one that I feel the strongest, and honestly, it's my preferred, my favorite heuristic, that I would so love more nonprofits to use this, especially when talking about will writing and so on. And so that it's that mental shortcut where if people perceive that the effort to make a decision or to take an action is difficult, it's too hard, then they will avoid it at all costs. Because, you know, honestly, and I'm going to say this bluntly, but I don't mean it in a negative way, we are lazy. We always want to take the path of least resistance, okay? And we're lazy because we're overwhelmed with information. There's so many high expectations on so many levels. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of, you know, things we need to be on the lookout. And so we need to be careful. So what we need to do, our responsibility as legacy marketers, is to actually remove those obstacles and make it feel like the process is simpler than what it really is. Because a lot of the misconception when it comes to legacy fundraising is that it is complicated. Oh my God, I have to figure out, you know, make a list of all my assets and then decide who's going to get it. And I don't want to leave anyone on the lurch, and I don't want to, you know, take off anybody. I don't want anybody to be upset. And then I have to book an appointment with my attorney, all of that. It's very, very labor intensive. And so our responsibility is to present it in a way that simplifies it, that it makes it look like it's not as overwhelming. Because really, when you think about it, it is a little bit easier than what people think. It's just that we tend to, you know, what we resist persists. Well, the same holds true in legacies, okay? So that's, so then the next one, also a great one. They're all good. It's just, you know, there's some that I wish we would see a lot more. And I would love to work with organizations that are like, all right, let's go, let's try all of this, let's do this, right? Messenger, and this is a great one. Like, this is a great example from Lifeboats in the UK. And basically is the voice that is, you know, talking to the donor is a person of authority. Now, when I say a person of authority, I'm not talking it has to be your CEO or it has to be the chair of the board. The person of authority has to be a voice of authority in the context of the story or whatever it is you're telling. So in this case, this guy, this is a video. If you go on Lifeboats, you'll find that video. he's basically one of the rescue guys. Lifeboat basically goes into the high seas and rescues people in the high seas. And so for all intents and purposes, is he high up in the totem pole for like, oh, sorry, let me rephrase that, in the hierarchical structure of an organization? No, of course not. But he's a person of authority when it comes to the impact that donations have in their ability to do their work efficiently and to save lives. And so that's what makes that person, this guy, the messenger, the right messenger for that specific campaign, right? So when you look at the different marketing that you'll do, whether it's online or offline, think about who would be the best person to be the messenger of whatever message you're trying to convey. Next is loss aversion, also a really good one. Oh, I get excited about all of these. So the loss aversion is that we're always motivated by what we have to lose, not by what we stand to gain, okay? And so I'm sure you have seen this in the commercial sector where, you know, you had an opportunity to buy something or to sign up to something and say like, you know, they use social proof a lot. Like, oh, you know, I'm sure you've been on those sites where you're shopping and it says, oh, Susie bought, you know, just bought this dress, or Tom bought that pair of pants and there's only 5 left. Well, that's social proofing in the act, right? But then there's also that, I'm sure you've done that where you're shopping and then you close the browser without closing cart. You didn't, you know, buy anything, and then suddenly you'll get an email like 5 minutes later saying, oh, hey, don't lose what's in your cart. Well, that's loss aversion. They're using the loss aversion. They're basically reminding you don't want to be left out. And so you stand to lose something if you don't complete your purchase, right? So this is the same thing here in legacies. And we need to start using that. A great example, and I wish I would have thought of that in my previous session at the RAISE conference, where someone asked about legacy societies, and that is a perfect example. So about the opt-in as opposed to the opt-out. So if you do want to promote a legacy society, and I have strong opinions about that, but the idea of promoting either a legacy society or you know, being part of something has better impact when it's presented through the loss aversion perspective, as opposed to, oh, well then by leaving a gift in your will, you will get our pin and you get invited to our annual gala and you get this and that. That is not very appealing. But when it's reframed and you change the narrative around and say, you know, don't miss out on, you know, being the first one to get, you know, prime seats at, you know, by leaving a gift in your will, you can get priority tickets to the next show, you know, let's say that's what I'm saying. So basically that when you reframe the narrative through that lens, it uses that loss aversion approach, heuristics. Does that make sense so far? I see. I'm assuming yes, because you're all there. So here's a summary. So uncertainty, do I have all the information I need to take the next step? Perceive the effort, how hard or easy does this feel? So you want to make it easy, right? Affect, am I emotionally stirred? Messenger is the person asking of significant authority to move me to take action. Anchoring is what information is used to help make a decision. Social proof, who else like me is taking this particular action? And loss aversion, what do I stand to lose by not taking action? So if there's like $1 million slide in this entire presentation, it's this one. If you want, when you get the slide deck after the session, print this one, stick it on your wall, and remember this. Okay, this is your $1 million slide, all right? Okay, so how about some case studies? So here we go. The Scottish Book Trust. And again, full disclosure, I did not work on this, okay? My friend Dana shared this with me. And she didn't work on this either. It was, and this is what's really interesting. The Scottish Book Trust is a very small organization. There's one fundraiser, and they were able to do this. So in the chat box, tell me, when I put up this image, where did your eyes go to first? I'll give you a second to write. The baby, the father, yeah. Right? Like it's the dad and the baby, right? It's, right? It's impactful, right? The eye contact between dad and baby. It really, to me, every time I see it, I get like little goosebumps. So here's what we're looking at. Okay, there we go. So the heuristics used here is the effect, right? The emotional connection, right? Because for those of you who are parents, and even if you're not a parent, you see something like that and it stirs an emotion, right? Like that connectivity between dad and baby. And even though the baby is not yet at the, probably won't really understand much about, whatever story dad is reading to the baby, it starts right from that stage. And so that is completely in line with what the organization does. A book is more than a story. It's a door to the future. It's a way back into society. It's a new beginning. And that's what it is. Dad, new beginning with baby. Emotion, right? So the effect heuristics here is what worked. The second element here is please consider leaving a gift in your will to the Scottish Book Trust. Notice in the entire thing, nowhere, none of the big, bolded, large size text is about leave a legacy or anything. It is gently nudged in here in the what 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph of the second image. And so this is this makes it simple and easy, and it's that the anchor here is to consider the gift in the will. It's not the first piece of information, but it is that simple nudge that makes it simple, that helps the donor know that this is exactly what the next chapter is. The next chapter is about leaving that gift in the will. So that's what's really, really interesting here of this example. Oh, and the last one here, the messenger heuristics. If you can read, the whole world is yours. And this is the actual librarian of the Scottish Book Trust. The librarian is the best messenger because she's the one that sees everybody. She helps everybody at the book trust. And so that's the person of a greater authority in the organization, not the executive director, not the board chair, not even the fundraiser. It's the librarian, because the moment you think about a library, immediately you think the go-to person is the librarian. Make sense? And see how it just flows really well. Very straightforward, very simple. So the Royal Opera House, I gave you an example, and there are a lot, like the case study we had for the Royal Opera House is very, very elaborate, but I decided to select just the most important one, and the one that I like the most, the heuristics I like the most. So this was part of an entire big appeal, okay? So I just picked 2 of my favorite elements in there. So one of the biggest challenge we have in legacy fundraising is to get people to go and write their wills and then to leave that a gift to the organization, to the donor. And we know that, as I was saying before, that whole process can be really, really difficult and daunting. So here is why I love this example. So this was like a folded insert into the entire pack. And so this is the first year that, and so how does this relate to that behavioral economics element as well, that I need to explain a little bit more? Remember that image at the beginning of the presentation, system 1, system 2? So oftentimes what we see in a lot of marketing is, you know, we do all the lovey-dovey, you know, talk about, you know, the impact and so on, and then suddenly it turns into, oh, look at all the advantages, the legal and fiscal advantages, and you can save on taxes and this and that. And so that forces the donor to go from that system 2 of being, you know, emotional and so on, to that system 1, which is logical and fast, right? And what you want to do is you want to keep people in, you want people to stay in system 2, in that emotional stuff, so that they can go and get into the, they can and make that decision. And so when you force people to switch back to system 1, that's when you lose them. So this is how they were able to bridge the 2. And so what they did is they created this infographic to help people. So this, you know, the main idea was remove loss aversion, right? Demonstrate that it can be quite straightforward, and these are the steps that the donors have to follow in order to leave a gift in their will. So think about what you'd like to support, and then step 2 is decide what type of gift you want. So they put residual versus pecuniary. This is like a major thumbs up to them, to put residual gifts first before pecuniary gift. So just in case you don't know, and I apologize if you know what it means, but I don't want to make an assumption here. Residual is a percentage of the estate. A pecuniary is a fixed amount. You always want to encourage donors to do a residual gift, because what we've seen is demonstrated is that the residual gifts tends to end up resulting into a higher gift than if it's a fixed amount. So you want to do that. So step 1, and then step 3, excuse me, is choose the method that suits you well. So whether it is to write a will or use a codicil, because this is a UK organization, they can also write a letter of wishes, which is not something that we can do in North America. And it's important to also, and again, it's another thumbs up to them. Usually we talk a lot about will writing, but then we never talk about codicils, which are that addendum to a will once a donor has already written their will, and now they want to leave a gift in their will to you. They don't necessarily need to go and have their will rewritten and pay all those fees. They can just write a codicil. So you want to remind, that's another way of integrating the concept of codicils to your organizations, to your marketing, excuse me. And so then when they choose the options, then here, like when you follow the infographic, write a will and then codicil, right? So on the left-hand side, write a will. And here's a really great, brilliant idea here is the clocks and the British pound concept. So it basically explains, well, it's 3 clocks, so it takes a bit more time and it's more costly because you're writing a will from scratch. You have to go see, in the UK, you'd have to go see a solicitor and so on. And so basically says, this is what to expect. Boom, 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 boom. But if you write a codicil, oops, sorry, I went too fast. If you write a codicil, however, it's just 2 clocks because you can do that very quickly and it doesn't cost as much. And then here it says, you can download a codicil, an example of a codicil, right on their website. So again, it's removing those obstacles, right? And then, so you always want to make these next steps clearer. And then the last option, the letter of wishes, which is an option in the UK, probably not an option for Canada or the US, but there's another one, which is only 1 clock and 1 British pound. So that's a cheaper way. And then step 4, let us know about your gift. And so, again, you always want to be encouraging donors to notify of their gifts. And so there's an element in here of chunking. So chunking means is when you break down key elements of a process in a simple bite-sized format, as opposed to like a big chunk that basically in a donor's mind makes it feel like it's not as overwhelming. So I mean, you probably do that with your own projects. When you have a big project and you're about to start and you feel really overwhelmed, then you need to be you need to break it down, right? So you know that you're moving things, your project is moving systematically and flows really well. Well, this is what you're trying to do for a donor. If you expect them to know exactly what the process is of writing a will, then they're left with that mindset of they have uncertainty, and so you've kept them in that space where they don't know what to anticipate, and here you broke it down for them. So if there's this is an example to replicate, to adapt and replicate in your own organization, because it is absolutely brilliant. It's a great example. And then the last part, which I already showed before, the social proofing, the social proof element in here. So, and again, so an element here, you know, digging deeper into the social proof example here, is the 75% element. So what you want to do is try to, if you're going to share a statistic about a behavior in your organization, you want that statistic to be the majority, not the minority, because otherwise, if you're showing that it's just a minority, then it won't be significant enough of proof or an anchor in order to help donors make that decision. Let me just think. So there we go. So I think here I see Josette, she's asking about the results. So let me just find the results here. So this was done in December. So the results as of December 2019, I don't have an update of the results yet. So 9 pledges were recorded. So they say it's 0.37% response rate, which I'm gonna, stay with me here, because I know some of you are probably going to go, well, that's awfully low. What's the point, right? We can't compare legacy results of things like this like you would with your monthly giving program or your annual giving program, because consider that even just a very small response rate or even a small conversion rate can have huge financial impact. So let's keep an open mind. A further 8 conversations and over 12 months had been recorded. So acquired 8 new donors. So when you consider 8 new donors at an average of about 55,000 pounds, that's nothing to sneeze at. The positive responses were 0.73 and an increase of 0.52 of last major legacy mailing on pledges and increased positive response rates. So there was an A/B testing happening, and here I just showed some of the elements. The idea here is not so much about the results, it's about using behavioral economics to increase and to nudge people a lot more. So so this is what I really want you to focus on, is so that we can start doing much more efficient and better legacy marketing. Okay, the results will come with it, but keep in mind that this is really new in legacy marketing. All right. Okay, I'm trying to, let me just stop for a second, grab a sip of water. Let's see. How would they feel about seeing all this information? Is it not overwhelming? Can you talk about why this document would not be overwhelming? Well, you have to understand that this was part of an entire pack. So I'm just showing you a couple of pieces. So obviously it feels like it looks out of sort, right? I just didn't put the entire pack because we have limited time and I wanted to show different examples of what was done that was really good and what could be improved. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of things, of missed opportunities, so that you understand both sides. So this was a very targeted legacy appeal. So these donors had already been primed before. This is not a cold appeal. You have to understand this. So you may think this looks overwhelming. It actually isn't if it's a donor that's been primed and they've been stewarded over quite some time, and so they would expect that to come. And also don't forget that it's friends and patrons of the Royal Opera House, so they already know the organization really well. This is not someone that just started donating last week, so you have to keep in mind. Who do you send these types of mail in your database if you don't have a lot of ages? So this is Lucienne, this is a lot about having to use other behavioral indicators of donors that can give you insights as to whether they are of that age group that they would be interested in this. So what I mean by that is someone that's been giving to your organization for a very, very long time in a consistent manner. You can also do some searches to see, who uses Mrs. or Ms. As their preferred pronoun. You can also look at names of typical names from the cohort of the age group you're looking for. So look at what were the more typical baby names in the 40s and 50s. And so that will give you an indicator. Is it going to be 100% foolproof? No, but at least it's more than what you had without having their age. But I would also encourage you to try collecting at least the year that they were born. And you can do this through a survey, and so on and so forth. So there we go. All right, let's go with another case study. You're welcome, Lucienne. So Greenpeace Australia Pacific. And so this was an appeal that was sent out a few months ago. And so when I was there, I was not involved in the crafting of the appeal, but it was sent to me after the fact, and they asked me to critique it using the 7 heuristics concept. And so here we go. So the first one is the second sentence here. Greenpeace only exists because of our community of supporters, volunteers, and activists. So they used right out of the gate social proofing, which is great, right? We only exist because of you. So it's a roundabout way to thank the supporter, but also to demonstrate that they are not alone. It's a community, okay? And if you go back to like your college psychology classes, if you ever had one, the Maslow pyramid of self-actualization is all about how humans have this innate need to be part of something, being part of a community. And so this gives that sense of belonging, and that's really powerful. The second one is the use of messengers. So here, David Attenborough, a very big environmentalist in the UK, so they use like this quote that he has said, and so that brings that credibility. And actually, David Attenborough is a supporter of Greenpeace in the UK. This is Australia Pacific, I have to say. So we stand at a unique point in our planet's history where we must all share responsibility for both for our present well-being and for the future of life on Earth. And so him being such like a very prominent and highly respected environmentalist brings a lot of that credibility. And in this case, this was really, really important because he's also of that age group that would really resonate with the older donors. And here is many of our most long-term and loyal supporters, people who share your concerns, value the passions of our planet, blah, 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 and include Greenpeace in their will. And of course, this could be reinforced, and this is a missed opportunity, I would say. We could reinforce with better social proofing by saying, X number of supporters leave a gift in our will, or, more, basically referring actually to a percentage, a little bit like the Royal Opera House, what they did there, that this message could have been reinforced and improved in order to really bring gravitas to that statement, to that paragraph, to show like, yes, a lot more people are leaving gifts in their wills to Greenpeace Australia Pacific. And so that's why you want, you know, don't be left out, join the other, you know, 50% of people leaving a gift in their will. So this was a missed opportunity. Does it mean that it's wrong? Of course not. I just want to put that out. I am not saying that they did it wrong. I'm just saying these are the things, that those little tweaks that you could be making to make it better. And like, this is where it could be really interesting to A/B test, right? You can send it just that way, just the way it is, and then send another one, another version with another segment of your donors where you would put a percentage, let's say. So that's the fun thing, is that you can be testing these concepts. And one big thing about testing these kinds of heuristics is that you might test it today and you'll have a certain response. You'll test it again in 6 months from now, and the response could be completely different. The results could be completely different. That's why it's so, so important to test a lot in legacies. And I find it's something we don't do enough of. We don't test messaging enough in legacies. We see it a lot in annual campaigns, a lot in monthly giving, but not enough in legacies. So I really would love to see more people do that. All right, next, the second page. Some supporters, again, this is another missed opportunities. Some supporters are concerned about the effort that might be needed to write a will, right? So what we're saying, we want to remove the obstacles, right? And what did they do? You want to remove the friction and offer like a step-by-step explanation or simplify it. But what they did here by writing it the way they did is, some supporters are concerned about the effort, is they reinforce the message that it may seem like it's an effort. And you want to do the opposite. And so you want to be careful in that way. But then they kind of redeem themselves a little bit by providing this, this testimonial about adding a codicil. Because he says, adding a codicil or rewriting the will to leave a gift to Greenpeace is a very easy step to take to ensure a more sustainable future world. So they gave the example, Harry gave that example. So he just said, oh, it actually is kind of simple. And so they kind of redeemed themselves. But I think what you want to be doing is, instead, if you're going to be taking some real estate in an appeal, make sure that you make it very simple for them, right? And demonstrate that it is easy. Like, show it, don't tell it. Do you know what I mean? Then the next one is, remember, you can become one of Green Guardians. So again, so flipping the narrative to use loss aversion here. So instead of saying you become, so now it's a benefit, but don't miss out on being part of Green Guardians, and then showing that social proofing element. So just sometimes it's just flipping the narrative. And again, you can test this, you can A/B test it, right? And so this could be fun. Here is another thing, a comment I had shared with them is to use much more straightforward language, because what this does is it fosters uncertainty by saying, would you consider, okay? And so using the, this tense of word can create uncertainty about whether it is going to happen or not. And please provide your answers using the response card again. So another opportunity to use loss aversion. So you can flip that narrative and say, don't wait, share with, respond to, here's the response card. And so I'm seeing that I'm running out of time and I still have a couple of examples. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to quickly run through the rest of the case studies, and then we'll have time for, we'll take a couple minutes for questions. So again, this is another example, well, another piece to that pack, loss aversion. They could have flipped the narrative here for loss aversion. And then help supporters by offering tick off boxes. So instead of expecting, so again, this is you're trying to get people to move from the emotional to the logic. And so you're asking them to share a story, which could be fine, but maybe what you could do is offer, because they're asking which campaigns, if the donor doesn't remember what campaigns there are, you're making it harder for them, so they might check out. So give them options of which campaign. So they could have said, you know, Arctic and forest and oceans and this and that, and then have like a little box where they can add more to it. So by jogging down their memory, it helps them and it removes that effort, that perceived effort. Again, here, would you consider, it fosters uncertainty. So you want to be careful about that and be a little bit more, again, here too, I might consider leaving a gift to Greenpeace. So again, it's that, that uncertainty. So I think, as a suggestion, actually, Natalia, oh, hi, Natalia, nice to see you. Nice to see that you're here. Instead of would is will. Will is a bit more, it sounds a lot like would, but it's a little bit more, I don't want to say forceful is not the right word, but it's a lot more definitive than would. Do you know what I mean? So I think that would make a very big difference. All right, next. Just checking my notes quickly. So again, here is I became Greenpeace Executive Director. So this is a letter from John Sovin, right? So this is the Executive Director of Greenpeace UK. So this is coming from the Executive Director. So he's talking about how his own experience. Oops, sorry, I went too quickly. And then the second one, is a very weak use of social proof. And so this is where it could have been much stronger. So the entire letter could have used a lot more emotion. It's very cerebral. And so it doesn't pull at the heartstring. It feels a bit cold. And so this entire appeal could have added a lot more of that emotional aspect of it. And this is the last part of that letter, where, let me just see, here we go. We could have reinforced here the social proof by giving percentage of campaigns supported by legacies. That would have been a lot more impactful, so that donors can build that trust and know that the money is going to be well used. And then reinforce again the behavior. It reinforces the behavior we don't want, including a gift in your will is a big decision. And of course, I don't expect you to make it today. Well, no, you want them to make it today. You don't want them to wait, because now you just basically gave them carte blanche to just discard the letter and postpone the decision. And so you don't want to enforce the behavior that you don't want. And so they could have used loss aversion in here. So, oh Lord, there's too many 2 minutes left. So some final tips. You want to reduce friction first and foremost. So the structure, so 4 simple tools, 3 things to do, that's the best way. So think through about the simple tools or the 3 things you want donors to do, and you prepare everything accordingly. The language should feel easy, quick, use things like easy, quick, simple, just 3 steps. Break it down simple so that you're removing that friction. You're making it simpler for them. Chunking in progress, so that step-by-step process. That when we see that and think about it in your own experience, when you see a chunking and a progress, it says, oh, I don't have to think through about anything. That's easy peasy. I can follow that. Dumb it down for me. Okay. Then increase the motivation. So use social proofing. So focusing on the majority, not just the many. The effects, so use emotion to drive the action. So let the images do the work for you. So that what that will do is will require you to develop less content, but instead focus more on the image, and then the content should elevate the image. And the commitment, signal their existing commitment as much as possible. So that brings them back to that reason why they are supporting you in the first place. Oof. And on the hour, at the top, exactly at the end. So if I'm happy to stay a few more minutes to answer questions, and I'm sorry I wasn't, I didn't take enough breaks. I always try to jam so much content because I want you to have all the information you need to be successful. But if I wasn't able to get to your question, please do write to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer your question.
It's that
But I can
cat
stay
kept
on.
distracting you.
A little bit, but then she eventually ran off. So
That's okay. I don't think anyone's complaining. That was awesome, Ligia. Great examples. I always love listening to you. And I always love hearing about topics that aren't necessarily always directly related to fundraising, but how we can apply those things. So this is really cool. We did have one question I thought you could answer quickly is, can
Sure.
new nonprofits do legacy marketing, or do they have to be kind of established?
Oh my God. Yeah. If you've got donors, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm one of those weird people that's like, start from day one.
Yeah.
Don't wait until you've got like, 300,000 donors in your database, because no, you need to start now. You have to start creating that culture already with your donors about that. So, and even if you already have like a really well-established fundraising program, from the moment you acquire a new donor, you have to start talking about legacies right away.
I love it.
It takes a long time for donors to make that connection. So if you're just starting out, yes, absolutely, because you might have some donors in your database that are already at that age group.
Yeah, or true believers, or get all those attributes. And that, when you were talking about the response rate, it seems like the real metric for success isn't really response rate or open rate, but it's ROI, right? And the ROI of bequest marketing is
the best of all.
Yeah, it's the highest.
Yeah.
So get going.
Yeah. Because the challenge is obviously when it comes to these things is that people look at it like through the lens of, oh yeah, but I sent out my direct mail appeal and I put in, $10,000 and I raised like 25,000. So my ROI is great. Well, good for you. But legacies is something that happens over a long time. So what you invest today, you're not going to get it right away. But when you look at how big those gifts are, you get it back.
It's planting a tree, right? The best time to plant a tree was yesterday, but that's it.
10 years ago, 15.
Ligia, this was awesome. We got your contact info. It's cool if people reach out to you offline. That's cool with you?
Absolutely. I will try to answer as soon as possible, because I already got like about 40 emails from the previous conference. So now with this one,
Well, be patient with her. She's already been real generous with her time doing multiple webinars for us this year. So Ligia, this is awesome. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Good luck on your PhD work, and to all of you, thanks for hanging out for an hour or so today. I'm sure a lot of you are also very busy, so I appreciate seeing a full room. We got some webinars coming up. We got 3 webinars next week. Wow. The first one is on Tuesday. So we got a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday session. So check those out. First webinar on Tuesday, going to talk about partnerships. So if you have been maybe thinking about, gee, how can we work with other organizations around us, near us? It's gonna be a good one. That's a topic I don't see covered very often, so you're not gonna want to miss that. Same time, same place, 1 week from today. But like I said, we got a Wednesday and a Thursday session, so just check out our webinar page to see all that info. We've got some cool topics coming up, so hopefully we'll see you again next week. So have a good rest of your Tuesday. Have a good week. Stay safe out there. If you're on the Gulf Coast or out on the West Coast, we're thinking about you. Please stay healthy, stay safe. We need you. But hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Bye now.